therapists or helpers who were with Aunt Jo through the journey who are here today. We did make some invitations, but I think in particular we want to note caregiver Paula, who was just priceless through this experience, and the Hospice House of Sebring. Those two are groups, people in groups, just provided such wonderful care for our dear Aunt Jo and Uncle Sam. And I'd like to ask Cheryl Shine and Cindy Robinette to stand up if they would. In particular for the family to know that those two made all of this ground crew activity happen, coordinating with a whole lot of special people. And then also, if Amy would stand, Minister Amy. Thank you. You'll be hearing from her in just a minute, but she has added such a wonderful spiritual element to this experience. And we have a number of others listed in the program, so you can see so many others who are listed here who've helped make this possible. We want to thank you. But finally, but I guess in final thanks from the family, or on behalf of the family, I want to thank the residents of Highlands Ridge. When Uncle Sam and Aunt Jo moved here in 2004, we had no idea that they were being adopted. And have been adopting as well, right? The amount of what this community does is just fantastic. And we cannot thank you enough for all the ways you've made this journey better. So thank you very much. And as I put in my notes, there are far too many people to thank personally. You know who you are. Thank you. So faith was a very important part of Aunt Jo's life. When we were talking about this service, we thought, well, what a perfect opportunity to share some of her faith. And Uncle Sam had this aha moment. He said, I know who we should have do this. So I'd like to have Minister Amy come forward, please. Start us off with an invitation.
It's an honor to be here, and I'm actually a chaplain, but that's okay. What a tribute. Before I even begin, what a tribute to Jo, and each person here, what a tribute for Sam. It's a wonderful thing to have such family and care all around you, wrapped around you, enveloping you. Let us pray. Generous and loving God, we gather in this sacred space, hearts full of gratitude for the life of Jo Cline. Your world is a brighter place because of her. She carried a lightness and grace that made each person in her presence feel seen and valued. She had a way of drawing out the best in others, focusing on what was good, unique in all who came before her, whether it was feline or human. And yet, oh God, even as we give thanks, we come with heavy hearts. The ache of loss is real, the absence undeniable. In our sorrow, we cry out to you because love so deep cannot be lost without great pain. We wrestle with the questions, the longing for more time, the prayers that seemed unanswered. And still, we trust that you are near, holding our grief when it is too heavy for us to bear, offering solace amidst the sadness and even the despair. Today, we stand in a sacred liminal space where sorrow and gratitude meet, where grief and legacy intertwine. And in this space, we commit ourselves to carrying Jo's light forward, to love as she loved, to serve as she served, and to live fully in her honor, because love does not end, it calls us forward. For Sam, the love of her life for over 43 years, your journey together was one of deep devotion, shared joys, and unwavering support of country, community, and one another. You made a fierce team and offered a model of love and service that inspired those who are all around you. I pray that you are inspired and find comfort in the love that surrounds you today and as you go forward in life. Though Jo is no longer with us in body, her love and spirit continue to echo in the lives she touched. May we continue to be inspired by her kindness, her compassion, and her unwavering belief in the goodness of others. May we find comfort in knowing that her legacy endures in our hearts. And for that, I would say, Amen. I would now like to ask Pat Shine to share a tribute to the woman whose presence has inspired and changed us all.
Thank you, Amy. Everyone in this room is here because they're aware of the health challenges that Jo faced and that Sam and Jo struggled with for a couple of years. And every one of us here is grieving in our own way, in our own fashion. But today, I don't see this is not a funeral service. I'm not here to deliver a eulogy. We're here to celebrate Jo Cline. And the reality is we all have known her at different times of our life. Obviously, Sue has known her from the very beginning, some of us through work life, others since she came here at Highlands Ridge. So what I'd really like to do is I'd like to sort of travel a little journey of how JoAnna Appleby became Jo Cline. It started in 1945 at a place called Monmouth, Illinois. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, it's a small town in northwest Illinois, actually not that far from the Iowa border. And after Jo completed high school there, she then went on and she went down to a business school in Peoria, Bradley, to get some business training down there. For a brief time, she actually went out to California and spent some time out there, but that really didn't work out as well as she had hoped, and so she ended up coming back to Illinois and back to her family. And she ended up getting a really, really interesting job at a place called Carl Sandburg Community College, which was in Galesburg, Illinois, not that far away from Monmouth. And she had a job there as the assistant president to the university. Just coincidentally, another individual was as a professor at that university, and his name was Fred Cline, Sam's older brother. And Fred got to know Jo Appleby, and so did Fred's wife, Louise. And Louise said to Sam, there's a really nice lady who works up here I think you should meet. But you got to understand when I say up here, Sam at that time was working for the Missouri legislature in Jefferson City, Missouri, 240 miles away. So it wasn't just a drop-in kind of thing. But eventually, Fred and Louise's daughter, Cheryl, set up a blind date. Says, I'm going to get you together, Uncle Sam. I'm going to get you together with this gal named Jo Appleby. And so they had a blind date. They got together. And they both felt it was enough to go and warrant a second date. And so And a couple of pictures you might have noticed up there was a Joe and a Steak and Shake cat. They went on their second date to Steak and Shake, where they sat for literally 3 hours and just talked and just talked and talked. And they really got to know each other very well. Obviously, they got together so well that Steak and Shake was in September of '80. 4 months later, in January of '81, they were man and wife. At that time, then Joe moved down with Sam and got a job working again with the Missouri State down in Jefferson City. But some of you, I think, were aware of the fact that Sam was in the National Guard at the time. He was what you sometimes refer to as a weekend warrior. But the following year, in 1982, Sam was called to active duty. And when he was called to active duty, he was assigned to work in the Pentagon. Well, that meant they had to pack up and then move to Northern Virginia, and so they did. And Sam went to work in the Pentagon, and Joe got a job working for the International Snowmobile Association, which you can understand how much of that occurs in the state of Virginia. Well, it wasn't too much long after that, and having been a military guy myself, 4 years later, Sam got orders to go to the Army Finance Center, which was located in Indianapolis. And so they moved to Indianapolis. And at that time, Joe was able to get a job in what probably was the closest thing I can come to a dream job. She got a job with the Lilly Endowment. And for those of you that aren't familiar, the Lilly Endowment was initially financed or funded by the Eli Lilly Corporation, but is a separate and distinct endowment that is responsible for primarily taking care of, their mission statement says, for education, religion, and community development. If you talk about a round peg and a round hole, for those of us that we know Joe, this was the type of job that worked out absolutely superb for her. But unfortunately, as things happened in the Army, they were only there for about 4 years, and they had to pack up because Sam got reassigned back to the Pentagon again. And this was in the early 90s, and luckily for us, for Cheryl and I, we just happened to be also moving to DC at the same time, and we didn't live that far apart. So Sam and I became carpool buddies, and we rode back and forth to the 5-sided building for a little while. And at that time, that was the first time that Cheryl and I had got to know Sam and Joe, and so we became friends that far back. But as time would have it, it wasn't that long, and they got sent back to Indianapolis again. And so this time, guess what? Joe was able to get a job back at the Lilly Foundation. That worked out fine. And so that's where they were. And it just so happens that for Cheryl and I, we made a little side trip to Fort Hood back to Indianapolis. And this is where our acquaintance became a true friendship. And so we've known Joe and Sam for many, many, many years. While they were there, Sam actually ended up retiring from the Army in 2001. He ended up coming down and actually doing some settling down here because this is where where Joe's family had come for years. They were familiar with Sebring. They came down here. Sam and Joe would come down on occasion, and especially at holidays and times like that, in order to spend some time down here. Joe kept working, and so Sam just finally said, well, I really like it down there, so they bought a house in 2004 down here. And Sam would be down here in the wintertime, and Joe would come down when she could, until she finally retired from the Lilly Foundation in 2006. And so that basically was how she came from JoAnna Appleby to the Joe Cline that we've all known and loved here for years here at Highlands Ridge. You know, Joe was a lot of things, as many of us are. She was obviously a daughter, a sister, an aunt, and a wife, but she had a lot of other things that I would just like to briefly talk about. Joe was a fantastic gardener. If you ever went to her place, whether it was a front yard or backyard, there always were gorgeous flowers there. And her favorite flower of all was the orchid, which of course is represented as you see over on her table today. Joe also was a very much of a card player. And Sam and Joe together would come together on Tuesday nights with other folks in the community to play couples cards. And on Thursday night, they would get together to play hand and foot with just the ladies. And as the ladies were telling me about how this experience goes, if you played poker before, you know there's what they call a tell. And what Joe said, anytime she picked up a card, she had that little wry smile on her face and then oh. She knew that they knew that everyone knew she had pulled a good card. Jo had a real volunteer spirit with her. She worked with Meals on Wheels, delivering meals to the needy here in Highlands County for over 15 years. She was successful in also getting a lot of people here to help her. The way that works is it takes one person to drive the vehicle, another person to deliver the meals. And so she got quite a few people here in the community involved with that. And I know also that her sister's also involved in Meals on Wheels, and I know you've been very involved with that for a long time. But after they did that on Tuesdays, they would then go out to lunch. There was a small group of ladies that would get together for lunch every day after Meals on Wheels, and they called themselves the Tata Girls. And if you really want to know what that means, you need to go see Cindy Robinette. Jo was a really good cook. And for those of us that had the opportunity to embellish our foods, we would all very much understand that. Saturday night was a night that was very commonly a night when Sam and Jo would invite friends, and they would always invite different folks down. Most of the community had an opportunity to do that. And at the time, when they were doing this, Jo would always have a special treat. She loved making treats. As a matter of fact, all during the year, she loved to bake. She would make special sweet treats especially, and she would deliver them around the community, and people would never know when Jo was going to come walking on the door with another treat in her hand. But, you know, Sam and Jo also would go back north every summer because of family reunions. Jo's family normally got together in the Illinois area. It was cousin Bev Clark, I think, who put on those celebrations at that time. Sam's family was a little bit different. They moved all around the country. And Jo was famous for one food at those family reunions, and that was hand-baked, or I should say homemade lasagna. And so, as a matter of fact, there was even talk about the fact that even the youngsters knew, hey, you want to go there, Aunt Jo made the best lasagna. Because each family had a term when they would take at night to take care of lasagna. But one trip, and Sam told me where it was, I don't remember, but it was a trip that they couldn't get to right away. Black Hills, thank you, Sam. You know, that was one day, she couldn't really bake it at home and take it, so they actually sort of cheated a little bit. They went locally and bought Stouffer's lasagna, served it, and apparently nobody was the wiser. Sam and Jo were really travel people. They loved to travel. According to the count I recently got, well over 10 cruises, and if you actually go all the way around the globe, over 30 different countries that they visited while they were together. They really enjoyed traveling. But, and as Steve mentioned earlier, or I guess it was maybe Amy when she talked about the feline, Sam, Jo loved cats. And this was one of the things I guess didn't come up in that 3-hour talk at Steak and Shake. Because 4 months later, she goes to Sam and she says, Sam, I really want to get a cat. I want to get another cat. So the first cat they got was with Maya. And then after Maya came Sevi. And then I think Sevi and Sophie were together for a short time together. And then, personal perspective, the best cat I've ever known in my life was Boomer. Boomer was the next one. And then finally ended up with Gabby. And Gabby, you know, when Sam and Jo were doing all these travelings around the world, obviously someone had to take Gabby. That was never an issue. There were always people standing in line volunteering to take Gabby while they were off on their trips. The thing, though, that I think most I remember about Jo is the fact that she was a golfer. You need to understand she came from a golfing family. As a matter of fact, her 2 nephews are quite good golfers, to say the least, and so there's a little bit of intimidation there. But Jo loved golf. When she got here, she became a member of the LGA 9. She worked in several different official capacities for the LGA 9. She also was a member of Party Girls. And those of you that are family will not understand, but there's an annual golf tournament here for couples golf called the Divorce Open. And it's called that because normally the husband and wife want to complain about the other's golf or whatever. But a few years ago, they had a booby prize for whoever came in last in their flight, and it was you got golf lessons. The following week, after she had her first lesson, she got a hole-in-one. Her first hole-in-one on hole number 4 south. 2 2 weeks later, she had a hole-in-one on the same hole again. And I don't remember exactly how long, but it was a while after that, but she got her third hole-in-one on hole 8 north. So she really, really loved golf, and she was known for golf. And she finally got Sam involved in it as well. So he came sort of begrudgingly, but Sam has become quite a golfer since. With all the good things that we talk about Joe, not everyone knew this, but Joe did have an addiction. It wasn't drugs, it wasn't alcohol. Joe was a shopaholic. And just to put it in context, I mean, when men go shopping, men don't shop. They know what they want to go, they buy. They go buy it and they come back and they're done. And I think most women, a generalization, but most women when they go, they like to go out, they'll look around, they might have something of interest, but during the day they'll say, yeah, that's something nice, I'm going to bring that home. Joe would bring everything home. It didn't matter, she would just bring everything home. She had a sort of a process. She would bring her friends down to take a look at it. What do you think, what do you think, what do you think? If it passed that test, it didn't have to pass the SAM test. And if it didn't pass the SAM test, one of two things. It either went back, and Joe was the queen of returns, let me tell you that. Everyone in Steve can tell you about that. If it didn't do that, it went into Joe's secret storage locker. That not necessarily Sam knew everything about. Also, there was a special thing. It didn't happen so much on schedule, but every once in a while on Thursdays, there would be a road trip. And the road trip went up to the big shops up in Lakeland. And the old saying was they were shops till they dropped. But they would always stop for lunch, and lunch was always at Wendy's. And that time, that's when Joe got her favorite meal at Wendy's. Baked potato with chili on top. But there was one particular thing that was really a passion for Joe when it came to shopping, and that's a thing called Polish pottery. And if you're not familiar with it, that's not unusual because you don't see it that often around in different places. But Joe and friends were up in Grand Haven one time, and they happened to come across a small little store that had Polish pottery. And there was a couple shelves of Polish pottery, but Joe was looking for something in particular. It turned out that thing in particular she couldn't see. But she noticed underneath the bottom shelf on the ground, tucked back, there was some other stuff. She gets down on her hands and knees, she's on the floor crawling, looking to see what she can find to get another piece of Polish pottery. She still has quite a collection today. As I close here, I'd like to just provide a couple of personal thoughts here, if I could, please. You know, we all have friends. You know, we have family. And then we have friends that feel like family. The one thing I've always noticed about Joe was whenever there was something going on, it was almost always done in a group. Joe would never come forward and say, I wanted to. She would always do what the group wanted to do. I had the misconception that that was a burden that she had to carry. She always did what everybody else wanted to do. But it wasn't a burden. It was a strength. It was in her DNA. That's the person she was. There's an old saying that a person isn't dead as long as others have a memory of them. Cheryl and I will cherish the memories of Joe Cline for the rest of our lives for one primary reason. There are nice people in the world, but Joe Cline was the nicest person that we ever met in our lives. We love you, Joe.
I'd like to invite the family who are interested in singing to come on forward. The song we're going to do is a family favorite. Joe's folks actually asked for this song at their graveside service. And with apologies to Spafford, we're actually behind the mics. With apologies to H.G. Spafford, we've added a Joe Cline verse. now we come to a time where we're going to invite folks to come forward to speak. And we realized you all have such a wonderful setup here. If you'd rather not come up and stand in front of the group but have something to say, we'll bring a microphone to you. Okay? But we're inviting folks who'd like to say anything they'd like about our dear Joe Cline. Got Susan coming forward.
Good afternoon to all of you. I'm Susan Connor, and I, along with my wonderful colleague Charles Johnson, hired Joe Cline to be our right hand at the Lilly Endowment back in the 80s. That's in Indianapolis, and Pat already told you a little bit about the Lilly Endowment, which makes charitable grants mega grants now, because they are one of the 10 biggest foundations in the world. But they run themselves as a very small enterprise. And we hired Jo for her skills, but neither Charles nor I realized how much we hit the jackpot with Jo Cline. We hired in Jo Cline not only a model employee, but she was one of the finest human beings that either of us would ever know. And it wasn't just that, we were getting a friend for life. Lilly Endowment, as I mentioned, is huge, but it has only about 50 employees to give out billions of dollars. And so we were a very tight-knit group that took our work very seriously, but we all had good senses of humor in my office. When you work in a serious place, you need a good sense of humor. She always seemed in a good mood and enjoyed laughing with us. And that was one of the reasons why it was such a joy to work with her, because of the laughter. In the area that I supervised, we handled thousands of requests for charitable grants that could not be honored. We had many more requests than we could possibly take care of. We would get many letters, for example, addressed to a woman who we did not know, but her name was Lillian Dowment. We knew those people hadn't done their homework. But our all-time funniest request at the Lilly Endowment, the hallowed walls of the Lilly Endowment, was from a woman who desperately needed breast equalization surgery. Because, after all, she was a dancer. She said in her impassioned plea for help that while her husband could not help her pay for the surgery, he stood 100% behind her. Jo and I had to break the news to this poor lady that the Lilly family's endowment could not fund adjustments to her endowment. After several years, Sam's work in the Army took them back to the Pentagon in Virginia, and oh, how I hated to see her go. But when Sam retired as a colonel, they chose to return to Indiana, and so Jo called me. And regrettably, I had a wonderful woman who had taken her place in our office, helping Charles and me, but I went door to door finding people who had openings. And now, you have to understand, Lilly Endowment has an unwritten policy that if you leave, you will never come back. They will not hire you back. But in Jo's case, there was a rare exception, because she left not through her own will, but because her husband dragged her back to So they did hire her back in our finance department, and ultimately, she worked for the chairman of the endowment, and oh, how he loved her. She was perfect for the role,
Never did Joe have a bad word to say about anyone, and never did anyone ever have a bad word to say about Joe Cline. If you knew Joe Cline, you loved her. My career eventually took me away from the endowment, but we remained lifelong friends, and we both eventually settled in retirement here in sunny Florida. So we got our husbands involved in our friendship, and they enjoyed rounds of golf and dinners discussing the Cline's world travel, which you've already heard about. Sam and Mike remain friends today. Joe and I would meet for lunch at a midpoint between Avon Park and Fort Myers, where we are, and we especially love the Hush Puppies at the Magnolia Street Cafe in Arcadia. Mike and I are going to stop there on the way home for old time's sake, and I'm getting a takeout order for Joe. Joe handled her illness with such grace. She was sunny, she was optimistic in her attitude. She had the stalwart support of Sam every step of the way. He exhibited the strength of a military officer and the heart of a lamb. Her nephew, Steve Long, kept us all well informed through Caring Bridge. All of us should be so lucky as to have a Steve Long when our life is short. I don't know many of you personally, but I do know that Joe told me about what a wonderful group of friends and neighbors she and Sam had cultivated here in the Avon Park area. And I saw myself your outpouring of support to them on the Caring Bridge website. As I said on that website the day she passed, and I will repeat here, we all miss Jo because she was very simply the most perfect human being that any of us will ever know. We love you, Jo, and we miss you. Thank you.
I'll just welcome folks to come on up if you, or I'll bring this to you. Elyse is coming forward.
Good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Joe's niece, Uncle Sam's niece. Thank you all for coming to honor Aunt Jo, to support Uncle Sam as well. Cline family members are here from Arizona, Arkansas, California, Georgia, Illinois, Missouri, New Mexico, Ohio, and Tennessee. How special Aunt Jo would feel knowing all of you are here, have come so far showing your love for her. Aunt Jo was kind, humble, and special, a beacon of light wherever she happened to be. Most of us have read or heard 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient, kind, does not envy or boast, isn't proud or rude or self-seeking, is not easily angered, and keeps no record of wrongs. I often wondered, how could she be all of these things? On one of my visits with her years ago, I went with her to deliver Meals on Wheels. At one stop, we visited a man who lived in a small, somewhat dilapidated old trailer. Upon inviting us in, Aunt Jo proceeded to set up his meal and speak to him in such a kind, encouraging way. Every year, my family gathers over at Clearwater Beach, and before Aunt Jo was ill, we'd invite she and Uncle Sam over to spend time with us. They were certainly brave, as there were 6 children, and at that time, they were ages 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, and 6, all in one beach house. Aunt Jo would bring thoughtfully planned and carefully wrapped gifts for each child, and she also would read to them, play train with them, with lined-up chairs, and simply loved on all 6. Aunt Jo and Uncle Sam were courageous enough to return the last morning, and Uncle Sam made pancakes for the whole crew. If any of you ever stayed with Uncle Sam and Aunt Jo, you were made to feel special. Once Jeff and I visited at Easter time, and on the bedside tables, Aunt Jo had carefully placed little burlap bunny bags filled with jelly beans. There were always casseroles prepared in the back fridge, yummy desserts, and fun activities to do. We'd play cards and go on rides in the golf carts looking for alligators. Some of this I'm repeating, but Aunt Jo loved Polish pottery as evidenced by her display in her kitchen. She was proud of her orchids, which she managed to grow on trees behind the house. And kitties, Boomer, Sophie, Maya, Sevi, and Uncle Sam's favorite, Gabby. I was always impressed by the smorgasbord of cat food variety, and I'm pretty sure the cats had more toys than Sam's number of golf balls. In January of 2023, Aunt Jo was discharged from a hospital in Orlando. Amazing cousin Steve arrived immediately to help, and I arrived 2 weeks later. This was a low point for Aunt Jo. However, she was absolutely determined to get better. Over time, that's exactly what she did. As she progressed, we kept a daily routine, which included walking with a walker inside the house. One day, as we passed the front door, Aunt Jo asked to go outside. And I said, absolutely. Well, with me hanging onto her gate belt, off we went to the end of the driveway. She kept going out into the cul-de-sac. As she was pushing the walker, I saw some fuzz in her hair. I began to pick it out and told her her neighbors would be talking about us acting like monkeys. Well, she began to laugh, and then she couldn't stop laughing. And that was pure joy to my ears, glimmers of hope. At this time, I just want to pause to mention the little screened area at Uncle Sam and Aunt Jo's entry. The people of Highlands Ridge left an ongoing supply of meals, cards, flowers, and treats in that little entry. They would disappear every day. I'd like to personally thank all of you dear people for your kindness and generosity. To say Aunt Jo and Uncle Sam were loved by this community would be an understatement. Aunt Jo loved to watch HGTV, notably Chip and JoAnna game show from Waco, Texas. She dreamed of going there one day. As she was feeling stronger, she let me know she'd like to go. Aunt Jo, Kim, Nancy, Louise, and I met in Waco and had a glorious time. Tours, shopping, a boat ride, and dinner reservations were all pre-planned with the idea that we'd only do what Aunt Jo was able to do. Well, she wanted to do everything, and so we did. Everywhere we went, people would ask, "Where are you from?" And it was like roll call, Ohio, Missouri, Florida, Arkansas, and then we'd all giggle. I'm thankful for this memory. Unfortunately, the following summer, her battle to conquer the vicious autoimmune disorder took a turn for the worse. The last text I received from Aunt Jo was upon her transfer from rehab back to the hospital. She said, and I quote, "The only problem is my bed looks right into a big mirror, so I can actually see how bad I look." And my response was, "You are the most beautiful person I know." She lived her life gracefully and died in the same way with grace and dignity and willingness. In true Cline tradition at the hospice facility, Uncle Sam, Steve, and I all slept in the same room with Aunt Jo. We were gathered around her, holding her hand, encouraging her, and singing to her while Steve played the guitar. Another Cline tradition is we all like to eat. However, none of us wanted to leave Aunt Jo, so Uncle Sam had our meals delivered. As our meal arrived on Sunday evening, we were serving up our portions and chatting away, and upon sitting down, Uncle Sam and I glanced over at Aunt Jo, and she chose that moment when we were distracted to slip away. This was her last act of kindness. Sorry. If there was ever to be an angel in heaven, it would surely be Aunt Jo, bright shining as the sun. Anyone who was able to spend time with her was truly blessed. As life goes on, we can honor Aunt Jo by being kind, showing compassion, and spending time with those we cherish. Listen carefully, share a meal, respect one another, giggle together, and cry too. Reminisce about special memories in life, and always hug tightly when you say goodbye. Thank you.
Are there others?
Hello, everybody. I'm Tom Gammon. I'm Sam's nephew by my mother, Eleanor, Sam's oldest sister. And I had something to
There we go. No, it's back on. It's back.
It's back on.
It's back on. We just need to turn
Okay. Is that, can everybody hear me? I, believe it or not, I was going to tell you how Sam and Jo met and got married. But somebody named Pat Chines did such a good job, I won't tell you again. But I would like to thank Uncle Fred, if he was here, and Sherry Lashley Cline, but she couldn't be here. That God bless you for what you did. Because without them doing that, nobody would be here today. We really thank them. But anyway, there's my notes for that. So this is off the cuff, so bear with me. I don't know, we probably invited ourselves, but back in 2014, we came down and visited Sam and Jo for 3 days or so, and finally they said, that's enough. No, they didn't do that. But anyway, we had just a wonderful visit with them, and I guess at least my wife Nancy helped me from being totally obnoxious, but they invited us back. So let's make this an annual event, and by God, we did it. And the only time we missed coming down in February, March was in one of the COVID years, and then that one year when Sam and Jo was feeling so bad that she recovered, but she just wasn't up to come. So, but we're so happy we were here a year ago, and she was just wonderful, and she even had tickets for a church that had a show and everything, and they were supporting the homeless. That's everything that she was about. Totally helping somebody else. So, but anyway, we cherish all the times we were with her, and we miss her so much. So, thank you.
Others?
Thank you. We were blessed to have her in our lives, but I want to just add something that wasn't on the program. Sam and Joe got through the endowment over the past several years. Many thousands of dollars donated to Samaritan's Touch Care Center, which most of you know is a passion of mine. And I thank you, Sam, and I thank you, Joe.
Others? Well, I'd just like to add my little bit here. I guess for me, faith in God and love of creation were hallmarks of Aunt Jo. While we never discussed it specifically, my bet is that she was a Celtic spirituality person. That would have been right up her alley. And what they say about Celtic, early Christian Celts were able to see the beautiful presence of the divine in a relationship with nature that stressed humility, dignity of all things, and God's presence in all of creation. They maintained rich spiritual practices such as prayer, meditation, and this one in particular caught me, communing with nature, care for those in need, hospitality, and poetic use of the imagination and art. They saw in all experiences the presence of the Spirit and were very skilled at seeking encounter with God in all of life. The Celts believed men and women are equally able to inspire, lead, and participate in all acts of community and spiritual practice. And they had a wonderful tradition of cultivating soul friends who took caring responsibility for assisting in the development of and sustained journey of a spiritual life well lived. And as I think about the group of people here, the number of soul friends that feel that soul friend nature of Jo Cline is substantial. Aunt Jo's faith was mighty personal. She wasn't one to vocalize it all that much, at least not to many of us. Yet her faith was there in action and relationship where it really mattered. And today, you've likely heard, and we have heard, others discuss this. And speaking of Celtic influences, I want to share a slightly altered prose entitled Into My Grieving, which comes from the book Celtic Daily Prayer. Into my grieving, I weave the fierceness of a caring parent. Into my grieving, I weave the compassion of the Son. Into my grieving, I weave the comfort of the Spirit. Into my grieving, I receive the presence of the Three-in-One. Into my anger, I invite the patience of a loving parent. Into my numbness, I invite the healing of the Son. Into my confusion, I invite the wisdom of the Spirit. And we shall grieve together, I in community with the Three-in-One. I hope that these Celtic words and others provide Uncle Sam and so many of us with the willingness and comfort at times to shake our fist at a higher power, while also knowing that that higher power is grieving with us and in others, with others in such tough times. And I'm going to close my little piece here by saying I'm reminded of a statement that came from one of my favorite movies when I was a kid. It was called, the movie was Brian's Song. And the story many of you know about Brian Piccolo. And at the end, the comment was, oh, how she lived, how she lived. I am so grateful for the time that we've had together, the opportunity that we have been able to treasure the memories of so many experiences that each of us have had with dear Aunt Jo. And the legacies, as have been mentioned, that we have a chance now to take Aunt Jo forward in so many of the actions we do and those we influence. And we're going to sing one last song here. Yes, Uncle Sam. Okay, good. Good.
This is going to be hard enough, so thank you, but no thanks. Thank you all for being here. It's a wonderful tribute to Jo, and I know she would be amazed, but she shouldn't be, because she's that kind of person. Many of you who have gotten to know us here at Highlands Ridge learned very quickly what a special person Jo was. So then and I mentioned this to some of you. So then the question would be, why'd she marry you? And I say she had a lapse in judgment. But I thank God for it, because we had 43 and a half years together. And we had a lot of fun. We did a lot of traveling, as Pat mentioned. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Susan, Paul. And I'll get to you in a minute. Thank you, Sue and Mike, for being here. They've become snowbirds and enjoy Florida winters down here. So it's great to have them here. You heard and saw how many of my family are here. And I really appreciate the effort that they put forth to be here for this, and it's obvious that they had a great love for Jo. And I'm going to name names first, folks, to thank. Steve orchestrated the celebration of life pretty much as he has done before with the carrying bridge and meal train, and he's quite a guy, as you can tell, and plays a great guitar too, and sings, and I can't thank you enough, Steve, for all you've done and continue to do. Cheryl Shine and Cindy, Robert Knapp were the folks on the ground here in Highlands Ridge that worked coordinated with Steve on the effort here. Linda Sarno put the program together. She's got a lot of experience doing that for the corral, and when we set this up, I knew Glenda was the right one to put the program together. She did a great job. Our friend Cindy Becker, who you may have seen in the slideshow, a few years ago, we traveled up to Asheville to the Vanderbilt Mansion, and Bob and Cindy were on the way back to Wisconsin, and we went up there and had a great time, and Bob and I cleaned their clock playing hands and foot the whole time, and Cindy's still shaking her head about it. But we had a lot of fun thrashing the women in the cars. John Nelson and Jim Kessler, appreciate your help with the technical side of the business here with the screen and microphones, and Cindy Becker also with the microphones, and Jim is videographing the celebration. And we'd like to thank the cookie bakers and the punch ladies. Very much appreciate you putting the effort in to take care of that. And as I did write a couple things down here because my memory's getting pretty bad, and I want to make sure I cover everything that I finally got written down. After Joe died, I got a lot of cards from people in Highlands Ridge, and one of her buddies sent me a card, and I want to quote from it because it describes Joe, and you've heard all the good things that Susan and everyone has said about Joe, and it's all true. But she said, "I'm so sorry and sad to hear about sweet, beautiful, special Joe's passing. She said the world will not be the same without Joe and her awesome smile and caring ways. Anytime I was lucky enough to be in her company, she brightened my day and made me feel blessed and happy. I will miss her terribly." Well, that's Joe Cline. As well described as I can think of. And I just wanted to wrap it up. 7 months ago yesterday, she died. It feels to me like it was yesterday. Tomorrow would have been her 80th birthday. She was the love of my life, and there aren't any words to describe how much I miss her. And I just want to offer this suggestion to those of you that have a spouse or a significant other, whatever. Don't take them for granted ever. Cherish every minute you have. Thank you.
Bring the family back up for In the Garden.
Just one more thing about the hymn we're going to sing here. Steve always has his guitar with him, and so in when we were at the hospice on Saturday afternoon, I believe it was, she went in Friday and died Sunday night. But on Saturday afternoon, Steve got his guitar out and played some hymns, and we sang, and while we were singing In the Garden, when we got to the chorus, Joe mouthed the words, and as we sang, and that's why I chose to sing In the Garden for you.
And the voice I hear
And I see a few children. And you guys, this is what family's about. This is what Joe and Sam really want you to remember. This is family. And you are loved. As we prepare to leave this place, we do so with the weight of sorrow, but also with a light of love that endures in each of us. Joe's life was a testament to kindness, to service, to the quiet and steady power of a life well lived. And while her presence is no longer in the way we long for, her love, her wisdom, her unwavering spirit remains with each of us here. Not even death can sever the love that Joe gave so freely. It continues in the lives she touched, in the hearts she shaped, in the partner she walked beside for over 43 years, in spite of a lapse of thinking. For Sam and for all who loved her, this is not the end of the story. Love remains, life remains, and though the path ahead feels uncertain, it is still a road worth walking. So I ask now that you go in peace, go in love, and go knowing that Joe's light is not gone. It shines on in every person here today and all those that she touched in so many other ways. Joe's light is not gone. It shines on in all of us, and for that I say, Amen.
So the program is completed, but we've allowed for an hour here for visiting as you're able. Thank you all for being here. It's been a wonderful celebration.
I didn't know you did. Yeah, I do for the corral too. You do? Yeah. Thanks.
All right, yeah.
Barry, how are you?
Thank you. Hey, you.
What's that?
I haven't seen her. Oh, what do you think? Playing golf. Playing golf. Yeah. Oh. It's not good. Oh, I play golf. Yeah, yeah. And, Saturday mornings we play at 7. And then during the week, we varies from 9 to 12.
I know you. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
You know, we were standing there talking. It was nice. 10 minutes beyond the start.
God, I know those two. Where the